Hello and welcome to round 12 here at Pro Tour Magic 2015. I'm Tim Willoughby here with Zach Hill, and we've got quite the feature match to start with on camera here. Our reigning King of the Hill, Hall of Famer William Jensen, and he is up against none other than Ben Friedman, also from the USA, also playing black-white, but kind of looking almost a little Australian there with his hat on in the feature match area.
Yeah, its hat is definitely a stylistic choice. I'll say nothing more than that.
Thoughtseize kicking things off here, and it looks like mainly the high drops there in Ben's hand, so we can see an Underworld Connections and Obstinate at Ghost Council, and then that there, a Whip of Erebos. What do we think we take here?
I'll take Underworld Connections.
Well, he answers that for me, but in this matchup, there are two cards that really matter a lot. Those are Pack Rat and Underworld Connections. If you have a chance to Thoughtseize either of those cards, you have to jump at that chance, because if a player has Underworld Connections and another player does not, that is the match right there. So I absolutely agree with Huey's choice.
It looks like Huey might have the 1-2 punch, because he gets to go turn 1 Thoughtseize into turn 2 Pack Rat. So that in itself, potentially just a game plan all of its own, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's exactly how the deck's set up. And, of course, you cast a Pack Rat and it gets killed. But the thing is, your opponent has to have an answer right away or the match is going to end.
And we did see there Ben Friedman drew the Hero's Downfall, Devour Flesh right on time to deal with the Pack Rat before it could get out of hand and just play over the top of any removal.
And this is the type of situation that you'll see in matchups like this, where very quickly, each player just kind of just has a bunch of answers. And, the Desecration Demon, it's a 6/6 flyer. It's a big deal. It can end games quickly. But what really matters is just, it trades 1-for-1 with a removal spell. And whether you're the person with the removal or the threat, a lot of the time what happens is one of your cards trades for another one of your opponent's cards. You just need a way to get up on card advantage so that you can have more resources than your opponent. And that's kind of the duel, in essence, that's happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's why Underworld Connections was such an important pickup for the Thoughtseize from William Jensen early on. It looks like an Elspeth there in Ben Friedman's hand, so if he can get up to the point where he's got appropriate mana to cast it, that could be a big game changer, because not quite so many ways of dealing with Planeswalkers, right?
Right, and obviously Elspeth pairs up extremely well against Desecration Demon, both because it can outright kill it and because the tokens keep it tapped essentially forever. The danger, of course, of feeding tokens is that if your opponent has a Bile Blight, you might get hit fast. But yeah, Obstinate and Elspeth just mean that Ben is ahead on threat advantage right now.
Not quite ahead on life, though. I mean, William Jensen has been able to get the first hit of the game in. If he can continue to do so with that Desecration Demon, then even if removal comes from Ben Friedman, then at least it's William's in a position where the next threat he draws doesn't need to do quite so much work.
I agree with that. Unlike Blood Baron, though, Obstinate's still vulnerable to targeted removal. It's not going to get hit with anything sorcery speed, but basically all the removal in William Jensen's deck, besides Banishing Light, are instants. So, it has a degree of an ability to protect itself. Obviously, the enter the battlefield ability means it does some work even if it dies. But with Ben at 6 life right now and a 6/6 Desecration Demon on the table, he's going to need to do something about that, and this game's going to be over in short order.
And unfortunately for him, it looks like he might well have to end up casting Elspeth if he's got the mana to do so, and using the ability which will kill off his own Obstinate as well. And then that Mutavault's still on the board, and on 8 life, that doesn't leave him with a huge amount of sort of time to play with, I guess.
I think if he Elspeths, he just makes 3 tokens, right? He can hold off the demon with one of those tokens, assuming that Billy doesn't have a Bile Blight, and can also allow those Mutavaults to get active. So, I mean, if Elspeth resolves, that is very, 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 very good for Ben.
I mean, there is a Hero's Downfall in William Jensen's hand, so it means that if he had kept it around, he would be able to deal with the Planeswalker fairly quickly. Looks like the Hero's Downfall taking out Obstinate, though, also a fine choice. And the Thoughtseize taking away Underworld Connections there, so we might not be seeing any connections in this game aside from the ones hitting the graveyard thanks to Thoughtseize.
The other advantage Ben has, and we just got the tool up now, seeing what's in his hand, Whip of Erebos means that if the game goes long, Whip plus Obstinate Ghost Council, you can put the Whip trigger that exiles it on the stack, and you can put Obstinate's trigger that exiles it on the stack, exile it due to Obstinate rather than the Whip, and keep your Ghost Council around for good. So Whip plus Obstinate, really kind of the ultimate late-game trump, and it seems like that's what Ben is playing for here. If he can get that active, the game's over.
Yeah, a nice little combo that's very, very difficult to disrupt. Because even if William Jensen found some way to kill off the Obsidat at instant speed, you can just do your little whip trick all over again.
Now we see Billy hit him with Mutavault and Life Beam Zombie. He's got an ultimate price in his hand, but Mutavault actually not a color. So when Ben activated Mutavault, William ordinarily would want to use a removal spell, just kill the Mutavault and attack with Desecration Demon. But ultimate price actually can't target Mutavault. So Ben was able to sacrifice the Mutavault to stave off the demon for a turn.
And in spite of having to sacrifice that land, there is an Urborg to a Yawgmoth, so if he wants to, he can cast Elspeth, Sun's Champion here.
Yeah, that last land's key. I mean, I think he's going to have to cast Elspeth. He can get back the Obsidian. He can attack for 5 points of lifelink damage, but he's staring down 12 points on the counterattack from Billy. The Obsidian would give him 7 more life points, but that's only 11, so I think we're going to need to see an Elspeth here.
And lo and behold, the latest trick from Mono Black decks, casting a white Planeswalker. I guess it's kind of appropriate, you know, Elspeth dies off, and now she's playing for the bad guys.
Yeah, right. This is Elspeth in the underworld right now.
So 3 soldier tokens and 5 loyalty on Elspeth there. Those soldier tokens potentially not too long for this world, and tellingly they're not going to be able to block that Lifebane zombie.
Right, Lifebane zombie is going to be able to get through for 3. Ben at 4, meaning 3 is a lot of damage. So Ben going to need to activate his Whip of Erebus next turn, or he's going to die to the Lifebane zombie, which just can't be blocked by any of these Elspeth tokens. Can't be killed by Elspeth either.
We see Ben Friedman there trying to get some kind of a read on the number 20 ranked player, William Jensen. Jensen doesn't give too much away in his face in terms of the way that he plays. You can see him there. He could be holding literally any 2 cards, and I'm pretty sure that he would have a similar look on his face.
Yeah, Chiefly, he just looks kind of vaguely frustrated and confused a lot, but I mean, he's one of the tightest players active right now. That's certainly not, it may be how he looks, but that's certainly not how he plays.
And we see there a soldier sacrifice to tap down that Desecration Demon. The Demon now an 8/8. It's been lethal for a while, though. It's more just a matter of every time you sacrifice a creature, the tapping down is the important bit, I guess. And Lifebane Zombie coming on through.
In addition to Obsidian coming back, those 2 1/1 tokens have lifelink too, so he can just attack them, and if he needs to gain a couple points of life, he's going to have a lot of 1/1 counters.
It's normally sort of kind of unusual to be going straight for the face when there's a Planeswalker in play, but right now William Jensen knows he needs to kind of press the advantages he's got, because the more time he gives Ben Friedman, the more potential there is for Friedman to get right back in this game.
Yeah, exactly, and I mean, the Elspeth's just going to want to keep ticking up regardless, so unless you can kill it, the difference between 5 and 2 loyalty is just not all that substantive.
And here we see the whip trick. So what's happening here, the whip has been tapped to sorcery speed, put Obsidian back into play. It's got haste, it gets to attack. At the end of turn, there's 2 different triggers going to happen, both of which want to exile Obsidian. One of them works a lot better for the control of Obsidian than the other. So Ben Friedman is going to choose to exile his Obsidian such that it comes back at the start of his next turn. And once it's come back, it forgets that it was ever dead in the first place.
So now a big moment for Ben right here. He's going to gain 5, 6, 7 life, plus that 2 from Obsidian. It's going to take him all the way up to 10, so he's coming from the brink of defeat to really a place where he's quite comfortable. Jensen, I'm looking for Bile Blights in his deck. He has 3 Bile Blights to be able to take care of those tokens. That is what he is drawing to, because that would require Ben... actually, Obsidian's not even going to be in play. So if he can top deck a Bile Blight to deal with these Elspeth tokens, he can attack with that demon for almost Ben's entire life total. He was able to sneak a Mutavault, and that could be game.
I mean, at least in terms of the main deck, Ben is the only one that's running the whip, which is potentially a bit of a trump in this mirror match. But, I mean, I guess the difference is that it means there's a little bit more space for removal in William Jensen's deck. And he's actually got 2 Elspeths to only 1 from Friedman. Friedman's got a little bit more of a diverse selection of threats.
Right, and we again talked earlier about those Blood Barons of Vizcapa in Billy Jensen's deck. Obviously, this is the matchup for those. Jensen only has 3 copies of Underworld Connection. Same thing with Ben. A lot of the traditional mono-black decks play 4 of those, so I think they rely in black-white on getting more of their card advantage through cards like Elspeth, cards like Whip, cards like Read the Bones, which Ben has, and not so much on Underworld Connection specifically, which is largely there to fuel Green Merchant of Asphodel out of the more traditional mono-black decks.
We've just heard a result from one of the back tables. Timothy Simoneau, he's playing the French Rabblemaster red deck. Currently one game up against Dmitry Butikov. Hopefully we'll get to see a little bit of that because Butikov is on Bant control. Not a deck we've seen a lot in the feature match area.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that deck that Butikov played. I've seen Gabriel Nassif's Gates deck, which looks a lot like a Bant control deck, but not quite the same thing.
And so Jensen here, it's kind of, his smile's been turned upside down a little bit by the attacks from Ben Friedman there. All of a sudden on just 5 life and pretty much facing a lethal attack here. Has he got anything? Hero's downfall from Ben is enough to win that first one. So Ben Friedman advancing to 1-0 against the King of the Hill, William Jensen, and we'll be looking at another match right after this next set of messages.
Hunt bigger game by playing at a Grand Prix. These open tournaments feature the best players in your region as well as top Magic pros. Upcoming Grand Prix include Portland, Utrecht, Sydney, Kobe, Salt Lake City, Orlando, and Shanghai. Visit wizards.com/Grand Prix for a complete schedule. You've watched the Pro Tour. How about playing on the Pro Tour? Qualifiers for Pro Tour Cons of Tarkir are going on now around the world, with winners earning an invitation and airfare to Honolulu, Hawaii in October. Visit wizards.com/PTQ for more information.
So while the players are shuffling up, they're getting ready for game 2 between William Jensen and Ben Friedman. We're going to have a little bit of a look in on one of our other matches. We see on the left of our screen there, that's Patrick Cox. You can tell he's playing the aggro deck. Kind of the cats, the sort of things he likes to do. He's up against Christian Seibold playing Blue Devotion, and pretty busy board on both sides. Looks like there's an awful lot of elemental tokens in play for the mono blue deck, which is not exactly where Naya really wants to be.
Yeah, anytime that you see a Master of Waves on the battlefield uncontested, yeah, we're now seeing a lot of elemental tokens. That is why the mono blue deck is so powerful. That is why it has already won a Pro Tour. And if Pat is not able to get that off the board, I cannot see him just being able to profitably attack through all these threats.
Yeah, under normal circumstances, having something like a Boros Rekno that we see in play for Patrick Cox quite good in an aggro mirror, but there's just so many creatures on the board for Christian Seibold here that one has to think that this is not going to be going well for the American, unless, in fact, the life totals for Seibold are pretty substantially low.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's the key variable right here. I mean, if Seibold is at a low enough life total, he's not going to be able to block that Boros Reckoner property.
So we've heard that Seibold is on just 6 life, so he is going to have to consider the blockers here, but he's got plenty of them. We can see him just saying, you know what, let's put as many blockers in play as we possibly can here. Let's play around just about every trick imaginable.
Yeah, the big tricks to worry about here are Boros Charm plus Gorklan Rampager, which can just stack on the damage right here. We see no one blocking the Reckoner. So if Cox has Celestia, I guess Celestia Charm's only 5.
Yeah, I mean, 3 cards in hand
Rampager would
Cox.
be it,
yeah.
right? So, I mean, yeah, Cox very live right here.
Seibold, of course, somehow managed to navigate his way through the draft earlier on today with 3 copies of Cone of Flame, instrumental in the position that he's in at the moment on 9-2 up against Patrick Cox. And there we see it.
Wow.
Gorklan Rampager. Is there any kind of a trick? Seibold's tapped out. Could this be the game for Cox?
I mean, it might be. I think, wow. Yeah, that's game. I mean, I was sitting there thinking there was no possible way Cox was going to be in this, but Gorklan Rampager is, I mean, that's a lot of trample damage, just not enough elementals to absorb. Goes to show that life totals definitely matter.
Oh, yeah. Like, it's at least that last point of life. Really quite important. We're going to have another quick live look in while the players on the front table are shuffling up. We get to see Raphael Levy on the left of our screen with plenty of creatures, again up against a mono blue deck, this time a blue deck being controlled by Patrick Dickman, a good friend of Christian Seibold's, actually.
We see Nykthos there, essentially able to give Dickman as many mana as he needs. These board states are crazy.
Again, life total's a big issue here. Fire Drinker Satan, not the best of blockers, but normally pretty decent on offense. And a Legion, is that a Legion word? No, sorry, that's a Goblin Rabblemaster, the sort of signature card of the red deck from Team Revolution. Levy very carefully working out here whether or not there's actually any good attacks for him.
You hear Raf groaning. He's trying to count up his damage, but I mean, just not a lot of good options for Raf.
So Blue's taken one down. At least on our camera in the last 5 minutes, Blue's 1-1 against these aggressive decks.
Well, and that's weirdly illustrative, I think, of Mono Blue's position in the format. A lot of people are saying, it's an incredibly strong deck. It's been refined like crazy, but no particularly wonderful matchups. Kind of a weak matchup against Blue-White, and it's so reliant upon drawing its powerful cards like Thassa and Master of Waves that it can be, pretty high variance against anything.
It's interesting, we were talking to Tom Martell just during the lunch break, and he was talking about how during the testing that his team was doing, they found that this is a format it's small edges at best that you see between these matchups. But by the sounds of it, I think that the players on our main match, William Jensen on the left of our screen there, and Ben Friedman on the right, they are ready to go now, so they're going to kick things off for Game 2 in this match. Obviously, currently, Ben Friedman 1 game up against the King of the Hill and Hall of Famer, William Jensen.
Again, I think what we're going to see in this matchup is just a battle of card advantage. We saw Whip of Erebos able to give him late game inevitability for Friedman. Read the Bones, Underworld Connections. Out of the side where we see Sin Collector, a card that's able to get ahead. We see Liliana Vest, the 4th Connections out of the board for Friedman. Also the 4th Connections, Sin Collector, Erebos for Jensen's side. We might even see Deicide coming out to deal with both Erebos and those extra copies of Underworld Connections.
A little bit of sad news for you, Zach. If you wanted to see that Bant control deck, it's going to have to be some other round, because Timothy Simoneau, he's already managed to get a 2-0 victory over the Russian player as William Jensen resolves one of the most important spells in the Black-White mid-range matchup. That's a Pack Rat.
Yeah,
Pack Rat there, one of the premium limited cards originally, but super powerful in just about every constructed format imaginable, even seeing a little bit of play in Vintage now. And Ben Friedman's going to have to find an answer to it pretty quickly, really.
Really, Pack Rat is a card, I think that players' perception of it fundamentally changed after Zvi Mashowitz wrote an article on how to play Pack Rat. Pack Rat viewed now as one of the defining cards of the mono black archetype. Originally, the deck that top-aided PT Theros only had 2 copies. It wasn't until players really realized that it wasn't just a way to deal with excess lands, but a card that you could start going all in on as soon as turn 3, that it became as ubiquitous as it is now.
Lifebane Zombie, another kind of really important card in the mono black deck, being what it is. Here it's not so much getting rid of anything, but it does give an awful lot of information to Ben Friedman. He sees exactly what's going on in William Jensen's hand and has a 3-1 body to go alongside with it.
Right, and as we saw earlier, the Intimidate, even though the decks are mostly black, it crucially can attack through Elspeth. The other thing it does in this match, there are 4 cards that are very, very, very important coming from Jensen. That is 1 copy of Obsidian Ghost Council, 3 copies of Blood Baron of Vizkopa, some of the best cards in the matchup. And if a Lifebane Zombie is able to hit one of those cards, that can make a huge difference in the tenor of the match.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's a body on the board plus a removal spell kind of one-ups you on a lot of the other interactions in the match that are 1-for-1, 1-for-1, 1-for-1.
And
you see another interesting card, though, in Friedman's hand, I think it was there, and that's a Liliana Vess, another card that's come from Magic 2015, and one that potentially could do some good work here, just making a consistent discard source.
Yeah, Liliana, another source of card advantage, can also get an answer to Pack Rat if you need it. I mean, 5 mana, tutor, gain some life, gets you a Bile Blight to dig you out of that hole. Again, the card advantage is important. It can tutor up Elspeth, it can tutor up Whip. The card does a lot of work.
And I guess playing Liliana means that having one of answers is that much stronger because you can find them that little bit more easily. A card that originally came out in Lorwyn and still doing good work now.
Now, interestingly, Jensen opted to kill the Lifebane Zombie rather than start making Pack Rat tokens. I think just Bile Blight, so powerful, 4 copies from Ben, that it's just not worth the risk of going too all in on Pack Rat too early.
And that was kind of what Zvi was saying when he was writing about how to play Pack Rat. It's kind of an all or nothing thing, right? You can put it into play and threaten to do things, but if you've got other stuff going on and you don't think you can win that race, fine. If you're going to play it, though, you might as well really go for it. And Obsidat there, zoning out for a bit. It's in exile for now, but we'll be seeing plenty more of Obsidat, I'm sure. And it's potentially going to give Ben Friedman a bit of a leg up in this matchup where currently life totals are at 17 apiece. And there it comes again. So all of a sudden, 19 to Jensen, just 15 to Ben Friedman. And it looks like Jensen does have a Devour Flesh in hand, so he is potentially going to be able to deal with the Obsidat at instant speed. It's just a matter of where he's going to deploy his mana first. He's also got underworld connections there, meaning that one of the things he might want to be doing with his land, rather than making mana at all, is just drawing a few extra cards.
Yeah, and you notice him putting it on the plains there, black mana. Just there's so many spells of double black that you really don't want to constrain that if you can avoid it.
So he ended up using the Hero's Downfall on Obsidat, presumably keeping around the Devour Flesh just in case a Blood Baron of his Vizkopa comes along. Not that many ways of dealing with the 5-mana threat, but a different 5-mana threat coming from Ben Friedman, perhaps one that William Jensen wasn't expecting so much. That's Liliana Vest. She's immediately searching something up, and we're going to get a little sneaky peek before William Jensen does as to what exactly that might be.
Now, Liliana, the first threat for Friedman to stick, tutoring up what's likely to be another threat, maybe an Elspeth, can set up card advantage. But look at Jensen's hand right now, just stacked. This is the power of Underworld Connections. We see Elspeth, we see Blood Baron, we see Banishing Light, Devour Flesh. So 2 threats and 2 answers. More cards coming for Jensen. And at a healthy 15 life, he's going to be able to leverage that Underworld Connections for the foreseeable future.
Banishing Light's another nice pickup for the mono black deck. I mean, we're still kind of calling it mono black because the sort of the base of it is, but now it's really much more just a straightforward black-white mid-range deck. Banishing Light, able to deal with Liliana Vest, able to deal with pretty much everything.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's styled, and the play pattern is very similar to the classical mono black lists, but in terms of the mana base and in terms of the cards it casts, Caves of Koilos really opens up a far more evenly distributed array of cards.
Blood Baron of Vizkopa here. This one of the cards that is unusual for the matchup because of all the cards in Ben Friedman's deck, there's very, very few that deal with the Blood Baron. It pretty much comes down to you either got Devour Flesh or you have multiple Mutabolts to block, right?
Sure.
Right, and I mean, yeah, and blocking with multiple Mutavolts is just such a risky proposition. And we see Jensen there not activating his Underworld Connections in order to get Blood Baron onto the battlefield. That proves very, very profitable here as it dodges a Lifebane zombie by the slimmest of margins. And now Friedman really needs to get an answer to that Blood Baron, or the race is going to get out of hand fast. Blood Baron can threaten to take down Liliana. It can essentially negate the Lifebane zombie because 4 life outweighs the 3 damage it turns. So a critical decision for Jensen to forego the card advantage from Underworld Connections, normally so decisive, but Blood Baron even more important, and Ben just was not able to muster one of his 2 Devour Flesh.
It's interesting, we've seen a lot of different demonstrations of range from William Jensen this tournament. During the limited phase where he was playing against Matt Sperling, very, very patient on his mass calcify that managed to get him into this position. But here, recognizing when he needs to be on the offensive, aggressively playing that Blood Baron because he knows that it's actually safer in play than it is in his hand.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons Jensen's one of the all-time greats, one of the current greats, and at 11-0, he is 2 matches ahead of his nearest runner-up. The field clustered around 9-2 and 8-3. There's not a single person at 10-1. So Jensen really running away with the tournament.
So Ben Friedman here having a look. It looks like he's going for a Banishing Light, which won't deal with the Blood Baron, but I can only assume that Ben has another plan for that particular threat.
Yeah, I think the Banishing Light might be set to target that Connections. And Whip, he is able to set up Whip of Erebos Obsidat. When we saw how decisive that was last game, is Ben has 7 lands, so he needs 8 lands to be able to whip and activate it. Can't quite do that, but so was that a Banishing Light that he's getting on top?
I believe so, yeah. And
okay.
In the meantime, he's just played his whip out because he knows that he wants to be doing that in the long term. It's just a matter of exactly when he's going to achieve it.
Right, and the numbers work out for the Banishing Light. You see, he has 4 mana, so that means he can activate the whip on 4 next turn. Banishing Light the Underworld Connections and rely on the life edge he's getting from Obsidat's lifelink ability and enters the battlefield ability to actually outpace Blood Baron. Blood Baron, one of the strongest elements of it, in addition to the protection, is the fact that it's a 4/4 lifelink, but at 5/5 lifelink, Ghost Council actually a trump. And it doesn't matter if Jensen's able to muster a removal spell unless he can exile either the whip or the Obsidat. The Obsidat's just going to keep coming back.
That makes a lot of sense. It's kind of interesting that sort of, if we look at the evolution of the mono black deck, when people first started playing around with it, this was a Grey Merchant of Asphodel deck. That was the kind of the big reach, the big sort of ta-da moment of the deck, the big finish. We see the Devouring Light there, able to deal with, the Banishing Light, sorry, able to deal with the Whip of Erebos right on time, exactly what William Jensen needed. And immediately a counterplay of the exact same card.
Right. I mean, one of the reasons he gets Banishing Light is to deal with another Banishing Light. Oh, wow, a big Devour Flesh. Able to take out the zombie, but of course zombie is there basically to play defense for Obsidat.
So
What this allows though from Ben is
27.
working out their life totals by having to target Banishing Light with Banishing Light. It does allow Jensen to keep drawing cards off that Underworld connections.
And the constant stream of cards is very, very important. I mean, William Jensen now a little bit on the back foot in terms of overall life, but I'm sure he's not going to be too scared of using that Underworld connections at least once more, just to desperately try and dig his way out of the situation he finds himself in. I mean, the Ghost Council is going to drain for 2 when it comes back into play. It's going to get to attack for another 5, and it looks like Jensen possibly without too much in the way of useful blockers there.
With Duress Lifebane not doing a lot, Elspeth can come down, make 3 tokens though, so Jensen's going to be getting hit for 2 points of drain off Obsidat, but he's able to attack back for 4, so Jensen actually going to be able to come ahead on this race when Elspeth hits the battlefield. Now Jensen also has 2 Mutavaults to Friedman's 1, so and the stream of tokens is going to mean that Blood Baron is going to stay on the battlefield, so Jensen, I think, actually ahead at this point, depending on how much work the whip does with the rest of Ben's graveyard. But this game is going to go on for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder whether or not William Jensen is now going to be looking at Elspeth and saying, yes, I'm going to be making tokens for now, but really, I need to do something decisive here. Is it possible he could play for the ultimate on this one?
I think that's a really excellent point. I mean, if, basically Blood Baron and Obsidat are racing each other, Ben's going to be gaining a lot of life if Obsidat attacks. It trades for a token that gains Friedman 5, 2 off the ETB ability, but if Jensen just keeps making tokens with Elspeth, activates the ultimate, I mean, it doesn't matter if Ben's at 100 life. Elspeth can end the game very fast.
Absolutely, and it sounds like in terms of games ending very fast, Raphael Levy has managed to pretty quickly square things up against Patrick Dickman, his Rabble Master red deck, making that match 1-1. Possible we might get to see a little bit of that decider depending on how things go here.
One other positive element of the Lifebane zombie out of Friedman's graveyard, in addition to giving him information about Jensen's hand and gaining him 3 life, he's going to be able to threaten Elspeth with those Lifebane zombies to make sure that Elspeth can't ultimate. Also might be able to kill it in 2 attacks if Jensen does not leave Blood Baron back next turn.
Not something he really wants to do. Obviously, he wants to be able to, in some way, shape or form, have a little bit of control over Ben Friedman's life total, which is currently spiraling in exactly the direction he was not hoping for. Ben Friedman now on 33 life to just 8 life for William Jensen, known to many of his friends as Huey.
Now, I will say I was expecting Friedman to threaten Elspeth with Lifebane Zombie, but it looks like he's attacking Jensen directly, so he's really trying to pressure Jensen's life total with Obsidat and with those Intimidate creatures with Lifebane Zombies. On the other hand, that does mean that Elspeth's going to be sticking around making tokens for the foreseeable future, and I really do think Ben needs to top deck something. You look at the life totals, Ben 33, Jensen 8, that is... Oh, wow, okay, we saw a Hero's Downfall. That's what he must have drawn last turn.
Yeah, the Hero's Downfall dealt with Elspeth, which meant that all of a sudden it was a fairly easy choice for Ben. He went straight for the throat. Not a huge amount of work left to do now in terms of finishing off William Jensen, because Elspeth was the big roadblock, and that's gone away now. Lifebane Zombie not able to take anything at Ben Friedman's hand, because Ben Friedman's living off the top of his deck and all of those things in his graveyard.
So Jensen drawing 2 cards a turn, Friedman doing 1, but Friedman has an active whip ahead on the damage race. I saw one of Huey's big arms in his graveyard and missed the Hero's Downfall deals, but yeah, that was definitely the play of the game.
Cost 4, right?
So here comes Lifebane Zombie.
Right?
At this point, I think that Ben Friedman pretty much knows what's going on in terms of William Jensen's hand, but he's going to have another little look. There's a Hero's Downfall, there's a Duress. The Downfall potentially kind of relevant here.
I mean, the thing about Downfall is you can deal with Obsidat for a turn, but it's just going to get whipped right back. I mean, Jensen needs to deal, he can't really interact with the graveyard. He needs to deal with the whip.
So could this be that Ben Friedman is able to treat that hat of his as the King of the Hill crown after this round?
Very possible. That
Already a
hat
game
certainly
up.
takes on a new dimension.
So attacking through here. Another soldier carelessly thrown away in the defense of William Jensen, but William Jensen's life total not looking particularly safe in the face of what Ben Friedman's up to here.
I mean, at some point, Ben's going to run out of life bane zombies, and the activated ability on the whip going to become a lot less relevant.
Giving all his creatures lifelink on its own, it just also means that, let's imagine a circumstance where William Jensen is able to deal with the current combo that Ben Friedman's got. 38 life is a large amount for the black deck to deal with. It's not going to be something that happens particularly quickly, which kind of just gives Ben the opportunity to reload over a number of turns, right?
Yeah, I think your observation earlier was on the money. I mean, without an Elspeth ultimate, Billy's not going to be able to end this game super fast. I mean, he can put together something like Desecration Demon, but I mean, even that,
9 to 30.
yeah, even that doesn't quite do it. It's just a lot of turns. 38's a big number.
Trigger.
And so Ben, all business now. I mean, he's someone that typically associates himself with playing limited, but clearly here he's got himself a good constructed deck. And the interesting thing to me is that actually it's all about the details in the deck construction. We've seen in this match that the Whip of Erebos has been absolutely crucial in both games, and having that reach to kind of go over the top what a lot of the other black decks has been doing, it means that he's just in a really nice spot in terms of the matchup, and it's only taken 1-2 cards.
And now Friedman, with an Underworld connection of his own, able to match Billy's card advantage. Billy has 2 Underworld connections, but at only 7 life, he cannot use them nearly as aggressively as Friedman can. That was a big, big draw for Friedman.
Yeah, Friedman will be utterly unafraid of drawing 2 cards a turn, and sooner or later he'll be able to parlay that into superior board position to the point that William Jensen's unable to deal with it. And actually, William Jensen now beginning to run out of soldier tokens to block with, so uncertain how long he'll even be able to activate that Underworld connections at all.
One thing that is somewhat interesting, Friedman knows that Jensen has duress, so he can't be too aggressive with the cards he draws, because if he strands something in his hand that he can't cast, he allows Jensen's duress to become live. So he's got to pace the cards he draws relative to his ability to cast them. But Jensen just does not have a whole lot of time left.
Doesn't have a lot of time left, and also, I mean, he activated his Underworld connections there, drew a land, not really what he's looking for. I mean, this is not necessarily one of your old-school mono-black decks that says, the more swamps I get in play, the better, because sooner or later I'm going to cast a Colossal Corrupt. Yes, it wants to have its land so that it can cast multiple spells a turn if drawing cards with Underworld connections, but there's not necessarily like the big X spell, the big Drain Life, or something like that to just really turn things around.
Jensen, falling to 5, scrying. He can activate another Underworld connections. He's going to need to use that Hero's Downfall on that Pack Rat before Friedman gets to untap, or Pack Rat can get out of hand. I mean, are we going to see Blood Baron stay back just to block Ghost Council? I mean, that means that he is really hurting when it comes to the race. But, I mean, Jensen out of soldier tokens to do blocking duty. He's going to need to put something together.
Yeah, Blood Baron staying back is pretty much like waving the white flag at this point for the black deck. While in principle he can hold things back, once Pack Rat's going, Pack Rat plus Underworld connections means that there's really not that much downside to saying, let's make a whole ton of rats.
Yeah, and again, even if he kills them, Ben can get it back with Whip of Erebos and discard another card that essentially sticks around, ensures another copy of the rat sticks around permanently. Jensen also has to worry about Mutavault. If he falls too low, Friedman has an active Mutavault. Now, Jensen has 2 of his own, but he's a little bit more constrained on mana. So we see him leaving back that Lifebane zombie. I mean, this is just an epic game of Magic. Huge life swings in each direction, lots of access to cards, lots of access to resources. And that, I mean, you're absolutely right, Tim. Whip of Erebos has just set the timber of this entire match, Game 1 and Game 2.
And in Game 2, Liliana Vess out the sideboard has been really important, because that's what sets up your one-of card that really breaks the matchup open. I mean, it means that Ben Friedman can build around a lot more combos, I suppose. He's been able to string together Obsidat plus Whip of Erebos without having to play, 3 or 4 copies of either of those cards, because he's got the glue to hold it all together, which is Liliana Vess, with a little bit of time, she can find both parts of the combo and potentially gain him some life by forcing William Jensen to attack her.
Jensen's hand, just a lot of lands right now, and Bile Blight from Friedman means that Elspeth unlikely to be an issue, Pack Rat unlikely to be an issue. So, I mean, this game's gone back and forth, but right now it seems like Friedman is currently firmly in the driver's seat.
So Jensen here, he's got a lot of cards in hand, but by the looks of it, quite a few of them are actually lands, and obviously that duress, which we've known about for some time, that's not really done anything other than sort of give William a few cards to shuffle around.
Before blocks.
Despondent look there as he starts blocking.
Well, you activate move off that Bile Blight like Wind Zombie.
And there's the Bile Blight.
No cards left?
Now I'm held in.
So that means that Lifebane Zombie not going to be able to block Obstinate right now, not going to be able to block Mutavault. Jensen has an active Mutavault. And it's a creature, but he can activate the other Mutavault depending on what he wants to block. The question is, how low can he afford to go on life? Because every life point is another card due to both those Underworld connections, but that Obsidian ability is just ticking down. Jensen is under a lot of clocks right now. This is a big decision for Jensen to make, because he needs each one of those lands as well.
Yeah, the Obsidian almost like kind of like an Armageddon clock against William Jensen. He's taking a little bit of damage each turn, and even if he's got blockers, that coming into playability, doing some work here for Ben Friedman. And we've had another result that we just heard through. Patrick Cox has defeated Christian Seibold 2-0. We saw the end of his first game. I'm guessing it must have been a little bit more of the same for the American there as he takes down the German, the Naya aggro deck beating Mono Blue Devotion.
So it looks like Jensen, out of smaller blockers, has no Mutavaults, has no Lifebane. What he does have is 2 activations of Underworld connections plus his draw step. So still very much alive, but I mean, Whip of Erebos has just defined this game. Do we know if that die is a token of some kind, or if it's just
I believe
extraneous?
it may be another Pack Rat token, but we'll just double check that with our spotter on the floor there. No, it looks like it's one that's just sort of lying fallow there. And a little reminder on the top of Ben Friedman's deck there, that being, by the way, you've got Obsidian face down right in the middle of play. Make sure to flip him the right way up. It makes quite a big difference at this point.
It does indeed, yeah. If he misses that trigger, that gives Jensen a lot more time than he would have initially.
Jensen with plenty of cards in hand here. He's been digging a little bit with Underworld connections, which Ben Friedman won't be too sad about because at this point life is kind of the constricting factor for Jensen. But with all of those cards, he's got an answer. Deep in the tank here. We can see both players with their hands on their heads.
It is just not a straightforward match. You know, this is a complicated game.
And it's interesting that sort of as much as you can practice these matchups, I mean, I'm sure that there's been a huge amount of reps. We know that this is what William Jensen does for a living, is beat people at Magic the Gathering. The tiny little nuances going on between each build means that there's always going to be little extra things that come up in the heat of any individual game that you can't necessarily have prepared for everything.
Something that happens amongst a lot of teams, I think one of the advantages of being on CFB Pantheon is that you have enough team members. This isn't really as big an issue. But I've been on teams that have, 10 people, but you just don't test the mirror match that much. I mean, I think they probably played a lot of games like this, but how many people have exactly the build that Friedman does? Probably not that many. So has Jensen tested against Whip? Has he tested against Liliana? Has he tested against Ghost Council Whip as a plan? I mean, each individual difference of cards means the matchup can play out very differently.
And I guess one of the other things that Jensen needs to worry about, he's currently came down. We've already seen 2 entire matches finished. If he finds a way of dealing the 43 points that he needs to, is there enough time for him to win another game? Time is ticking through in this round. Just 16 minutes left on the clock for this round, so I wouldn't want to have to deal effectively 63 points of damage in 16 minutes. It's looking like William Jensen fighting a bit of a rearguard action here. And having to face a Pack Rat from Ben Friedman.
Right, and Pack-Rat just adds to the story. You know, not a lot of cards, no cards in Friedman's hand, no active Underworld connections. Jensen at 2, meaning that Jensen's going to have to attack with that Obsidian, or with Blood Baron. But when he was banishing lighting Underworld connections, I mean, he really wants to banishing light Whip of Erebos so he can ultimately kill that Obsidian and leverage the extra cards in his hand. He's got a Deicide now to deal with the Whip, but he just needs a banishing effect so that he can start being aggressive with Blood Baron and really getting ahead. I mean, at 1 life to 43, he's got a massive mountain to climb.
There's a lot of work to be done here. Effectively, right this moment, those Underworld connections not doing a whole lot. I would be a little wary about spending too many more points of life on drawing cards here. He's done the attack to put himself back up to 5, drawn 1 more. That looked like a second Blood Baron, which was potentially a pretty big pickup here for William Jensen if he wants to get back in this race. But first things first, let's deal with, there goes the Whip. And there's a Blood Baron. That'll be able to block and a land. This game's not over.
No, it's absolutely not. But by Deiciding on his main phase, that means he can't leave Mutavault back in case something happens to Blood Baron, nor can he he can activate it with Swamp, I guess, that gives him an out to Devour Flesh. But still, Friedman top-decking a removal spell could be big here, but not that many removal spells that deal with Blood Baron in this combo.
Let's see what
Read the Bones there, another one-off from Ben Friedman's deck. And a nice way of getting a little bit of card advantage. He's certainly not going to mind too much about the life. Scries 2, sticks them both on the bottom, and draws what looks like a couple of lands there.
And 2 cards, very important, because that means that Pack-Rat can now attack for 3. If he's able to get in with Ghost Council and a 3/3 Pack-Rat,
it'd be lethal.
I mean, it's close. William gains 4 life from Blood Baron. So that means that he can go up to 6. He would take 3 falling to 3. And Friedman would have 2 more Pack-Rats back to get even bigger. So the raw cards in Friedman's hand, very important. But looks like he's just saying, okay, we're going to play the Flicker game. Attacking into lifelink creatures, not a great way to get ahead. That would be, you know, if he attacked, Jensen would be at 3. If he doesn't attack, Jensen's at 2.
Lifelink creatures with protection from your deck.
Yeah, right.
Let's not forget about that one there. Pretty important in how this one's going to go. But yeah, William Jensen battling against both the colossal life total of Ben Friedman and what's going on with the clock. I mean, at the moment, he's a game down. If time got called now after the extra turns, he would lose 1-0.
Yeah, Jensen, I think right now, a pretty commanding position with that second Blood Baron. He's got to figure out exactly, Tim, just how to actually end this game and not lose 1-0.
Get busy living or get busy dying. He's swinging in for a full 8 here, padding his life total up to 9. And that, of course, effectively meaning he gets to draw more cards with Underworld connections also. And another Blood Baron.
Wow.
This is how you turn around a black-white match.
What Ben needs to do, I think, is draw Elspeth right now. That could deal with every single one of those Blood Barons.
Elspeth would be a huge, huge pickup. The -2 ability, destroying all creatures with power 4 or greater. And at the moment, the creatures with power 4 or greater are exactly the things that he needs to worry about.
733.
You see Jensen just like use the token that's right there. Very conscious of time, not even wanting to take the time it takes for Ben to dig up tokens. So Billy just on the attack right now, really going to try to end this game. But Friedman, you know, a lot of decisions to make. And did he draw that Elspeth? Wow. Wow.
A very, very big draw
there. That is the game.
Jensen knew the writing was on the wall as soon as he saw Elspeth. He didn't even worry about the dice being picked up there. So -2, getting rid of those Blood Barons, clearing a path, allowing Ben Friedman to do the final attacks to mean that Ben Friedman is now our king of the hill. We'll be seeing him in the feature match area next round. But there's one more match going on in this feature match area. It's in its final game. That being the match between, on the left of our screen, we're going to have Hall of Famer Raphael Levy, currently ranked 24th in the world. He's up against Patrick Dickman of Germany. And it looks like, fairly unsurprisingly, the red deck of Raphael Levy pretty well unleashed, all on the offensive. And Patrick Dickman having to sort of play things a little bit more cagely with his mono blue deck, gradually deploying threats to the board. We'll find out exactly how much damage Raphael Levy has done thus far very, very shortly.
Just looking at the deck list, Friedman had a grand total of 1 Elspeth in his deck. So a big top deck for him. But yeah, right now, Raph, I mean, he's got an active Fire Fist striker, but just a lot of blockers on Dickman's side, and an active Thassa is always exactly what the mono blue deck wants.
It's funny, with these red decks, often, while the third land's kind of okay, especially running the Goblin Rabble Master, the fourth land might effectively be one more than Raph really wanted to draw over the course of this game. So he's able to just say, one creature not blocking, able to get in, but Mutavault trading for the Fire Fist striker there. I mean, I guess getting Patrick Dickman down to 2 lands potentially pretty important. It means that the likes of Thassa, God of the Sea, are going to be a difficult one for the German to cast. And Patrick Dickman on just 6 life, he's potentially a little bit of trouble here, even with all of those creatures to block. We know that Raphael Levy has got burn in his deck.
Yeah, Dickman at 6. Do we know what's in Raph's hand? Oh, it's just Mountain. Mountain in Raph's hand. Domestication for Dickman. Not any one spell that can deal 6, and Thassa able to make creatures unblockable. So Raph's staring death in the face right now. What can he do to deal 6 damage?
It's going to be a battle. None of his creatures are able to block. They're only good in the red zone doing one thing, and that is attacking. But right now, I mean, he has to threaten that he's got something good in hand, but I don't know if Patrick Dickman's decisions really change too much regardless of what's in Levy's hand. He's always blocking. It's just a matter of with what.
Well, having top deck Dynacharge, maybe he can psych Dickman into blocking with more creatures. If he's able to kill all of Dickman's blockers, that means that Dickman can only crack back with Thassa, or if he's able to turn off enough devotion. So Levy theoretically still in the game.
I mean, Dynacharge is in his hand, it turns out, and that makes a big difference in terms of what could happen based on these blocks. I mean, I think that, as I said previously, Dickman has to block to some extent. If he put sort of one creature in front of each, he's still got some swings back, and it's not as if Levy's on a massive life total. 7 life there, enough that he's able to do some work on offense. And in terms of the total amount of devotion that Dickman has, the Night Veil Spectre on its own pretty much ensures that Thassa, God of the Sea, is going to be a 5/5 able to swing in. And that little shake of the head from Raphael Levy there, I've seen that shake before. It doesn't tend to go along with the Frenchman picking up the big W in any games at the moment. So he's just sort of talking through what's going on, looking a little bit shaky for the Frenchman, shall we say. And a Master of Waves there drawn by Patrick Dickman. That not really the operative problem being faced by Raphael Levy, because that's a lethal attack there coming from Patrick Dickman. He's able to win the match 2-1. The end of our last game in the feature match area. Patrick Dickman victorious there in what looks like it was probably a fairly tricky 3 games up against Hall of Famer Raphael Levy. But let's just think back a little bit to the match against William Jensen with Ben Friedman. William Jensen now on X1, still a match ahead of Ben Friedman. Kind of amazing to be in a position at this point in the Pro Tour of having 2 full matches going in and losing a match and still being at the absolute top of the standings.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that's the advantage of being 2 matches ahead, right? Is that, you can lose to your biggest challenger and still be ranked ahead of him. So still a commanding performance from Jensen. He may not be king of the hill, but he's certainly king of the tournament. But I mean, if those are the matches that we've seen, I mean, Jensen's still going to have to earn his way into the top 8. I mean, that was complex. There were a lot of back and forths, and Jensen, even leading the tournament, has 4 more matches of that kind of magic before we start on Sunday.
And at least one of those matches, potentially, he's going to have to sit out with the plebs on one of the regular seats at our Pro Tour here. We have had the seats improved for this Pro Tour for the general players, but yeah, he may have to move out of the feature match area. We're going to go back to the feature match area for just a little bit more, though, because I believe that we are fairly shortly going to have an interview with Patrick Dickman, the winner of the final match that we saw there up against Raphael Levy. Dickman, best known for Modern, but turns out he's no slouch in general, and potentially now able to get onto the German national team as German national champion if he does well enough this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, certainly this season has been his breakout performance. I'm really interested in hearing from him because I'm interested in how his team arrived on Mono Blue. Everyone knew it was a deck, but not that many people play it, so maybe he's going to talk about that when we hear him.
Yeah, it's certainly something that's been interesting to hear about. We've seen a few people are playing the blue deck. Neil Reeves is playing the blue deck, for example. But in terms of the really big teams, it seems like people have moved in a slightly different direction. And obviously, there are good players playing it. I'm interested in terms of what the decision making was there. Is it just a matter of not wanting to play lots of mirror matches?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to find out.
I mean, in terms of people who are qualified to tell us, I feel like Patrick Dickman, probably a great person to speak to. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to pass down to Marshall Sutcliffe in the feature match area to speak with Patrick Dickman.
Hey guys, welcome down to the feature match area. Marshall Sutcliffe here, and I've got Patrick Dickman with me. Patrick, that was close.
Yeah, that was like super close. I did not expect the matchup to be like this razor thin. But I mean, then again, I was playing against Rafael, who probably knows what he's doing and why he's playing the deck. So that was like very intense, yeah.
Now, how do you view the matchup in general? Is that considered favorable for you when you sit down, once you see what he's playing?
Yeah, it's like if your opponent opens up with Mountain, you're always happy as the mono blue player. I mean, you have all these like small creatures, and Cloud Fin Raptor usually grows like it's on the board early, and then it grows bigger than all of his creatures. You have Typebinder Mage, you have Frostbone Weird, like 8 really powerful 2-drops that he basically cannot answer. And I mean, Master of Waves has protection from red and brings a bunch of tokens. And if they don't have the Legion Loyalist immediately, they just die because they can never attack into your like, I don't know, horde of 5 tokens or whatever. And also Sasa gives you like a powerful clock without committing a lot of creatures to that to attack. I mean, it's just Sasa attacking, like you make her unblockable and attack, and it's a 4-turn clock while you have all your blockers at home or have rapid hybridization stuff up.
Now, what about in the game that you lost here? What went wrong there?
Well, that was my fault. Like I did not think about my keep. It was just this hand was a clear mulligan. It was like Mutavolt, 3 islands, a Sasa, a Jace, and a Cloud Fin Raptor. Like really nothing going on there, especially on the draw. Like on the play, you might consider because you have the Sasa early, and if you hit a 2-drop or another 1-drop, you have like with the Jace, you can turn Sasa online, and you can get to +1 Jace. But this way, I was just like way outclassed. I drew another 2 lands and immediately rolled over and died. So this was just a mistake and really bad play on my part.
Okay, now before we let you go, what about for the tournament as a big perspective here? What's your record? How are you looking?
Well, I'm at 9-3 now, so I need one more win to lock up top 75, which would be platinum for me already. And well, let's see. Christian Seibert is doing pretty well in this tournament right now, and we're both kind of in a race for the German team captain. So like once I win another round, I'll have to like try and finish as good as possible because like I'd really like to play the WMCQ. And yeah, we'll see. Like overall, one more win would be great because this is like the aim when I came here. Like it was solid finish, 10-6, no experiments, most solid deck that you can find, and yeah, just try to lock up platinum because like this is the most important thing to have when you want to like do all the Magic traveling thing.
Sure. All right. Well, good luck. Everybody will be rooting for you at home. Marshall Sutcliffe signing off. Send it back to the booth.
Thanks for that there, Marshall. Great to hear a little bit more information from the feature match area. But as much as has been going on in the feature match area, there's been plenty more going on in the tournament in general. And the best way of finding out a little bit more about that, I think we should go and see what's going on on our news desk and find out exactly how things are going elsewhere in the tournament here at Magic Pro Tour Magic 2015.
Thank you very much to Tim and Zach in the booth. That white tells you that we are here for the constructed rounds, 4 to come, and everything's going to get decided. You heard Patrick Dickman there talking so eloquently. He's got a top 8 to try and get into. He's got a World Magic Cup to try and lock up. He's got Platinum to try and lock up. He could end up with 3 of those, 2-1. He could end up with none of those in the next 4 to 5 hours of dramatic magic here at Pro Tour M15. So here's some of the scores on the doors just to bring you. Jeremy Desani, he's up to 9-3. Have a look at the top 20 overall. At the moment, William Jensen, his results still coming to go in through our database, but of course, he's now at 11-1. Matt Sperling at 10-2. John Finkel, 10-2. He played Neil Reeves way back in the 90s. Those two would have been going at it, and here they are again. So Finkel wins that one over Neil Reeves. Suchin Kuo is up to 10-2. That at the expense of Greg Orange, who falls to 9-3, but is still very handily positioned. Even Flock, he is really making Matej Zadelkai sweat for the Slovak Republic World Magic Cup captaincy, Jackson Cunningham. He is a winner in this last round, and he defeated a big scalp, Tom Martell, a Pro Tour champion, of course, from Gatecrash. Now, what else do we have? Melissa DeTora, she is at 9-3. She managed to get past Neil Rigby of England. Rigby falls to 8-4 on the edge of top 8 elimination. But because William Jensen led by a couple of rounds coming back in, we could yet see maybe an extra 12-4 sneaking into the back of the top 8. Maybe 7th, 8th, 9th, around about there. Maybe your sort of mix for 12-4, we'll have to see. Pierre-Christophe Mondon, he's up to 9-3. That puts Ray Perez Jr. off our leaderboard. And as you see, more results coming in here. William Jensen now confirmed at 11-1 on the board. Timothée Simoneau, talk about the puncher's chance. He was not qualified for this event until last weekend when he made it to go silver at GP Boston. He is at 10-2, and he is in range of the top 8 right now with 4 rounds to go. So that gives you a shape of what we're looking at on our top 20 leaderboard. There are Hall of Famers everywhere at this event this weekend, and I've got 2 of them over at the video wall. It's time for another standard deck tech. Here's Hall of Famer Randy Buehler and Hall of Famer Zvi Moshevitz.